Typical.
Okay.
Okay, so welcome to Zoom. We're not physically in Kilat Hakerem, but maybe we're spiritually
Holy
in
Spirit.
Kilat Hakerem. Um, we're doing laws. We're during this whole crazy event that we're living through, where the new news chases itself from hour to hour. We're doing Israeli laws. And last week we did the law of Takanat Shavim, the idea that even though a criminal really should, pay back everything, we make it easier for the criminal to do tshuva. Okay, we let him pay money instead of returning the object. If the object went up in value, he just pays the principal. He doesn't pay the extra. And the biggest one was that I think blew a lot of your minds was that if somebody steals something from me and then comes to give it back, what am I supposed to do? You don't remember? You're supposed to what?
Give him a
You're,
percentage.
you're encouraged not to take it.
You're
Oh.
highly encouraged not to take it, to say,
Oh, really?
wow, I really respect what you did. That's so worthy and everything, but I don't need it anymore. You keep it.
Okay.
Okay, and that's a way to ease the path towards repentance for thieves.
Except it rewards the thief.
It certainly does, yes. It doesn't reward theft really. It rewards the effort the person is making to go back on the straight and narrow.
No, but it rewards the theft because he gets to keep the object that he
He doesn't
stole.
know that in advance, and you're not
He doesn't
obligated
know
to
it
let
in
him keep it.
advance, but if
But
he only steals from virtuous people,
yeah, if he steals from virtuous people, he's going to get away with it, is what you're saying.
exactly,
The Talmud's idea
and get
is
a
that
blessing with it on top of it.
the Talmud's idea is that this eases his path. He's embarrassed. He wants to give it back. You don't take it. He'll be able to live with that, and that he won't do it anymore. Agree, not agree. But the point is that we ease the path. The other thing we saw was that if a criminal leaves crime and people see that, he's acting on the straight and narrow 10, 20 years for a long time, then what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to forget that he ever was a criminal. We're not supposed to mention what he did. We're not supposed to keep in mind what he did a long time ago. And the equivalent of that in modern Israeli law is that if a criminal gets convicted, people, please mute yourselves if okay, there it is. If a criminal gets convicted and that same criminal serves time and then gets released and time goes on and he stays honest, then we erase from his criminal record eventually, after a certain period, we erase the crime that was committed. That's the modern equivalent in Israeli law, because we want the person to have an opportunity to go back on the straight and narrow. So that's a recap for last week. Welcome also to Yohanan and Ira and etc. Okay. Tonight, we're going to do, this is quite a law. I think it's actually more stronger than last week's. What I'll do is I'll start by playing you a video. This is a video clip that I think a lot of you have already seen. I'm going to open it up first, and then I am going to share it with you. I want you to identify the video. That shouldn't be too hard. And then I want you to discuss. Are you ready? Here it comes. Share sound. Here is the video. You are being warned about this video because it's a violent video. And I hope you are ready. Here it goes. Identify it, and what do you think of it?
Oh!
C'est un malade.
Oh non, gros! Oh!
Ouais, mais il y a son pote, il va se faire tirer dessus. Il est trop con, le mec qui a l'arme.
Le mec il est hyper courageux. Oh!
Wesh.
This is at Bondi Beach.
Oh l'enculé, il a pris une deuxième arme. En gros, il a récupéré l'arme du mec qui... Tu sais, il l'avait pris dans sa main là.
Mais il y en a un deuxième, là. Ils sont tous les deux sur le bridge.
Oui, oui, j'ai vu.
Tu les vois, les deux?
Ouais.
Mais gars, je comprends pas ce qui se passe, gars. Je suis terrorisé.
Mec, c'est un attentat, frère. Eh, il y en a un, il est en dessous du bridge.
Mais genre, c'est un attentat devant nos yeux?
Ouais.
Gars, une minute de plus, on était dehors.
Okay.
Bondi Beach, Australia.
Bondi Beach, Australia. Here is the hero, Ahmed El Ahmed, in his hospital bed recovering from his wounds. This is somebody from the Jewish community in Australia. Dan, who I guess will eventually watch this video in person, he was at Bondi Beach not too long ago in his trip to Australia. And what we're watching is, it was the end of 2025. It was only a few months ago. So what did he do?
I want to remind everyone that a very good friend of mine was seriously wounded and miraculously survived with shrapnel to his head at Bondi Beach.
Really?
Yeah. Arsen Ostrovsky, for those who might know his name.
Yeah.
Refuah Shlema.
Can.
He disarmed the shooter.
He disarmed the shooter. Did you see the part where, he points the gun at him and the shooter moves back and then he puts the gun down by the tree? Saw that part?
Yep.
Yeah. So why did he leave? Why did he release the weapon? Folks, why did he release the weapon?
Because in Australia they have strict gun laws and he didn't know what to do. He should have shot that guy in his feet and he would have been immobilized. But in Australia, you're not allowed to have guns. So that's what he was afraid to shoot. And he set the gun down.
He was afraid to shoot. He didn't know what to do.
And
It could
plus,
also be he set the gun down once the guy had moved far enough away so that the police wouldn't think that he was the terrorist.
after he shot him in his feet,
Exactly.
he could have set the gun down after he shot him in the feet. I don't know how to get my video on. I'm not that good at this.
Uh-huh. So we can't see your picture, in other words.
Oh, well.
All right. Well, see if you can figure it out. We'd like to see you. Yeah. So this fellow, he had a vegetable store across the street, if I remember correctly, from the incident, and nobody called to him. He wasn't, personally involved in any way, and he risked his life to jump on that terrorist and neutralize him. So, ladies and gentlemen, what did he do? What mitzvah did he do?
Oh, was it wasn't Rodef, was it? No.
Well, that certainly was a rodef that he stopped. Yeah. What's the mitzvah? Name the mitzvah.
Oh,
Don't stand by the blood of your neighbor or brother.
You see the headline.
Lo
All right.
la'amod-
First, I
lo
thought
la'amod
you'd
adam.
say, the mitzvah is to save a life. That's
Right.
true.
Pikuach
The
nefesh.
mitzvah is to save a life. The mitzvah is to even take down a rodef. Like Yochanan said, if he had shot the terrorist in order to save people, that would also have been not halachically positive. Is a rodef, his life is forfeit. And but there's another mitzvah besides saving life, and that is in Hebrew. In Hebrew, it's only a few syllables. Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa, which is a difficult phrase to translate. Do not stand over the blood of your fellow man. Do not stand over the blood of your fellow man. Well, what does that mean? Do not stand over the blood of your fellow man.
don't be a bystander.
Don't be a bystander. Right? You see somebody in trouble, there's an obligation to interfere, to do something, right? Not to stand by. So we'll take a look at before we get into that, we'll look at some other famous cases of do not stand over the blood of your fellow man. Let's see what we can do. Okay. Anybody know this story?
Yes.
Yes.
She called for help in the street. People looked out their window and nobody called the
Nobody
police.
helped. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Nobody. And
I
all they
forgot
had
to
to
write
do
the
was
date.
pick up the phone.
I forgot to write the date. I think it was 1964.
Yeah.
It was the Upper East Side of Manhattan. What was it?
Yeah, it was something. Yeah. Sounds
something
right.
like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was
This
there,
is-
still living there then. I remember it very, very well.
You
Mhm.
remember the incident?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Me too.
For you too. Okay. A lot of you remember the incident. She was raped and murdered, and there were apparently many people who heard and who saw, and nobody even called the police.
It was in Kew
And,
Gardens, Queens in 1964.
Oh, it was Kew Garden, Queens. Excuse me. Thank you.
Oh,
Kew Garden, Queens. You say 1964. Here in the slideshow, you have a link to Wikipedia. We can verify it. She was 28 years old, 1964. Yes, Kew Gardens, neighborhood of Queens. Okay. The New York Times said 37 witnesses. Subsequent investigation said less, but this became like the talk of the United States. How is it possible that people don't jump in to help? Okay?
And they didn't even have to go down and put themselves at any risk. Just pick up the fucking phone.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody
I think it probably was a case of, well, somebody else will certainly do it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It's so easy to pick up a phone.
It's so easy to pick up a phone. All you have to do is call the police. Sometimes saving somebody may cost you. For instance, take a look here.
Yeah.
He was wounded. Right? And that's going to bring up an issue we won't discuss now. We'll discuss it a bit later. If you step in to save somebody's life and it costs you, right? You're injured or you have to pay a lot of money or whatever it is. If there's like costs to your interference in order to save their life, is there then any obligation to you? Okay. And in this case, the Jewish community moved in to do a lot to help this man and to repay the kindness that he did. the really, really sad part of this is that if you look at the Wikipedia article on the Bondi Beach shooting, the entire thing is anti-Semitic and Islamophobic. Wikipedia has been taken over, and it becomes as anti-Israel and as pro anti-Israel as it possibly is able to make it. Well, one of the things I saw, even one, there was one, making fun of somebody in the Jewish community who gave him $1. If I understood the story correctly, he gave him $1 from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. But the result was, look, this is what Jews do. They say you save their lives and they give you $1. Okay, does anyone recognize this picture?
No.
No.
Nobody?
No.
This was much more recent. This was 2009. Anybody recognize the place? Where do you have a river like that in Israel?
Yarkon.
That's the
Yarkon.
Yarkon.
Yeah.
That's the Yarkon River. This is the Tel Aviv area.
Yeah.
What happened? Anyone remember?
Vaguely remember. I remember the name, but I don't remember the actual story.
There was somebody who was drowning and he went in, and he was poisoned from the water.
Yeah.
Oh, it was the Maccabi.
No, it was somebody.
No, it wasn't. No,
He
sorry.
went in to save somebody, and the water's polluted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something like that. I can't. The whole thing I can't remember, but
okay. This is Yamin Feingold. She's still with us today, and her father apparently was Abi Natan. He never knew her. He never had any relationship to her, but he's her biological father. And you can see that she's a professional. She does water sports professionally. She was like Israel's champion of water sports. So here she's rowing in the Yarkon River. And if you don't remember the story, we can simply read the story. Here it is in the Globus newspaper. Okay, if I can make this a little bigger. Okay, here's the story. And in order to make it available in English, wow, the tools that we have today, huh? Translate to English in Chrome. And I would like... Bingo, huh? I would like a volunteer reader. Do we have one?
Okay. I'll read. The narrow, murky channel of the Yarkon River is slowly establishing its status as a magnifying glass of Israel's society, allowing a sharp and searching look at the distortions and sins that are revealed in the cracks in the peaceful appearance. The farts and ugliness are well disguised in the banality of the crowded suburban life surrounding the river. Mothers and fathers chase toddlers, feed them, teach them to ride bicycles, cover them from the wind, and alongside them flows foul-smelling water, revealing that these parents are depleting the resources of their innocent children, leaving them wallowing in toxic mud. Under cover of darkness, young lovers caress each other on the grass, and at the same time, a man throws the body of a little girl, who is both his daughter and granddaughter, into the water. Yeah, I remember it now. In the weeks that follow, legions of toddlers with their parents will come to visit the scene. The parents out of a voyeuristic urge, and the children out of that egocentric and mindless joy of life that is bound up with their age. A little further on, up the ravine, a modern steel bridge connects the Mamedonian area to the National Stadium, reminding the local residents of the disgrace of the 15th Maccabiah, a symbol of the local numbness.
Okay, something happened a year before Yasmin Feingold. Her event happened in 2009. And this article is recalling that something else happened in the same place in 2008, a sordid story about incest in the family, and this man, this father grandfather, throws a little girl into the river to drown.
Wasn't she in a suitcase?
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know. And so in the same place where this little girl was drowned, something happens to Yasmin Feingold. The translation here is not good. She's not a sailor. She's what's the word? She's an oars. What is it? What do you call it?
A rower. She's a rower.
Rower. Okay, the rower, Yasmin Feingold.
Or an oarswoman.
Okay.
Yeah,
please continue reading.
Yasmin Feingold, who drowned in the Yarkon River in front of an indifferent audience, was apparently the daughter of peace activist Ebi Natan, who is said to have been involved in public affairs all his life. Feingold is our Kitty Genovese, the woman who was stabbed repeatedly for an hour in Kew Gardens, Queens, in the presence of 38 neighbours who watched the horrific act from their windows and nearby sidewalks without intervening. In 1960,
so you see the claim of the article. The claim of the article is that Israel is affected by this Kitty Genovese syndrome, and that Yasmin Feingold is the example of it, and that there's all kinds of murky, terrible things underneath the murky waters of the Yarkon. That's our Kew Garden Queens. Go ahead.
In 1964, the news of her death shocked New Yorkers who paused to consider the significance of the event for their own lives. In all the discussions about Good Samaritan laws that were proposed in various places across the United States in the decades that followed, Kitty Genovese's name was mentioned. Someone will surely take care of it. The public debate about the laws, which Christians call the Good Samaritan law, and which we call the Thou shalt not stand for thy neighbor's blood law, highlighted the situation in which the debate is being waged between two camps. On the one hand, community members, residents of small towns, cohesive religious communities, and neighborhoods with a homogeneous population. And on the other hand, people from the big city, such as Jerry Seinfeld and his gang. In the concluding episode of the series, individualist, sophisticated, fashionable, cynical, happy to please others, and anxious for their privacy, their anonymity, and their right to be different from strangers.
Okay, so here we have community versus mass populations. Also look at this. We're going to discuss this. Jews and Christians have different names for the law. In Western countries where there are laws about this kind of thing, it's called the Good Samaritan law. We're going to talk about that. But in Israel, it's called the Thou shalt not stand by thy neighbor's blood law. There's significance in the two different names where we're going to get.
What is the secret of the wickedness of city dwellers? Why do individualism, which is the source of creativity, and the abundance of interpersonal interactions, which is the secret of progress, exact such a terrible moral price? The simple reason for this is that life in urban density teaches us all that responsibility for everything is distributed and shared among countless people. Even someone who is not inherently righteous would not stand idly by in the face of a woman with her head bobbing in the water, located a few swimming strokes away from the stagnant water of a stream, if he knew that he was standing there alone.
Okay, that's what happened to her. She fell off of her boat thing, and she was drowning in the Yarkon, very close to shore, a few swimming strokes. And people just watched and watched, and everybody thought that someone else would jump into the water to save her. In the end, it turned out that her foot was tied to the raft, and that's, I guess, typical or standard. It's for safety, but in her case, it was dangerous. And one man came in to save her. Go ahead.
The instincts of those standing on the banks of the Yarkon River were not bad from their youth. They looked to the right and left, saw dozens of people like themselves also standing and looking at each other, and said to themselves, "Someone will surely take care of this. There are younger people here than me, probably better swimmers, people perhaps close to the event, perhaps policemen or people in authority. I came here as a spectator, not as a player. Multiple gatekeepers will not help."
Okay. Go ahead.
Their position was logical, even though it resulted in evil behavior. When dozens of people are simultaneously responsible for the same outcome, a prisoner's dilemma arises among them, in which each of them shifts moral responsibility onto the shoulders of the others. The logic of this position is so solid that the Israeli legislature's determination in 1998 that refraining from helping a person in danger constitutes a criminal offense will not be able to penetrate it. An industrialist friend, well versed in managerial practice and the physics of materials, once explained to me that responsibility exhibits the qualities of acetone. Because of its excessive volatility, it can only be preserved in small closed bottles, and even then for a limited time only. The Yasmin Feingold affair therefore provides an important lesson for every manager, educator, and legislator. Distributed responsibility tends to evaporate and disappear. In situations where responsibility is not specific to certain people, such as in cases of domestic violence that no one reports, we will always need to rely on singularly virtuous individuals, while most people will behave as absolute evildoers, not because they are inherently evil, but because the circumstances of the time and place distract them from the matter itself. The practical conclusions that arise from this distinction concern many areas of law. In the field of saving lives, it is known that the enactment of a law will stand for the blood of your neighbor has only symbolic meaning. In the field of responsibility for environmental pollution, there is no escape from appointing clear responsibilities for the final results, whether by privating ecological assets and handing them over to franchisees who will be recorded according to their degree of success, or by encouraging class actions to the extent that it justifies an investigation and demand by private parties regarding the sources of pollution.
Notice what he thinks. He thinks that the law has no potency, and he thinks that people cannot be educated to intervene to save lives, and that the only way to deal with things is through legislation and mass work. Okay, go ahead.
In the area of corporate governance, too, multiple gatekeepers will be ineffective at best. When I look around me and find myself part of a long and distinguished line of accountants, lawyers, auditors, and directors, my inclination to act is no greater than that of the spectators of Yasmin Feingold's convulsions. To solve this problem, one usually needs a single gatekeeper who is responsible for the results, even through no fault of his own, or whose interests are inextricably identified with those of the investing public. And
Okay,
we will
in other words, you need one person to take charge. That's what he's suggesting. And he concludes with exactly that. Look at the end of this article.
We will have the privilege of one righteous man in Sodom, Avi Toivin, 62, who jumped into the water and saved Feingold's life in the presence of an astonished and curious audience. The scripture speaks of him as if there were a whole world.
In other words, the scripture speaks of him as if he saved a whole world. He saves one life. It's as if he saved the whole world. Okay. So, first of all, what do you think of all of these stories? Is Israeli society like you, Garden Hills Queens?
Yeah, we're all human beings.
We're all human beings. Well, does Israeli society act like Kew Garden Hills Queens?
No.
I think not.
In
Not
things like
usually.
this, not in other
I
respects.
think not. It's
Normally, no.
Let's have a bit of a discussion on this.
Well, I
How-
know that
Which people? How do people think? Is Kitty Genovese the same thing in Israel, or not, or to what degree? What do you think?
not quite, I think. There's the old definition of what an Israeli is,
Yeah.
of a sabra, that is tough and hard and spiky on the outside, but on the inside, he's warm and caring. And people here do go out of their way to help other people much more than they did in New York.
Oh, that's absolutely true.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have 2 votes for Israel.
Okay,
Well,
so
it's-
I vote that there's no way that here in Israel that a group of 30 some people would allow a woman to be violated like that. No way.
No way.
So that's my vote.
And yet
Okay.
most of them stood by until one person finally.
Well, that was for the girl that was in the water, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
That's-
okay.
it's a-
But when
it's
it
a
comes
different
to
case, different
when it
case.
comes- yeah, but
In
when it
that
comes
case, somebody had to be able to swim. So
This
it
was a
limits
62-year-old, not there must have been young, strong people who could swim perfectly well.
That's
in that
exactly what
crowd.
the guy said, what the writer said. And in fact,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter. Anybody, there are other people could have done, but if the people thought that there was someone else would go in and do it.
The law,
Yeah, which is typical in crowds.
the law regarding abuse, home abuse, is that if you do not report it, you are breaking the law. You can report it to the authorities. You don't have to give names. And it is breaking the law. If you hear your neighbor beating up his wife or whatever, then it's your duty legally to report it. Lots of people don't do that because they're scared, but it is the law.
They also prefer to pretend it doesn't happen, especially with wife abuse.
I was taken a little bit, and I don't remember the wording exactly, about responsibility. That I think that I don't agree with that. I think that there are many, many people who are naturally responsible, and responsibility can be taught. And I've been a lifeguard and a lifeguard instructor for close to 30 years. And having worked on an ambulance in New York, I can say that it's critical that there's an incident commander. There has to be somebody who is organizing everything. But I mean, I was in New York on 9/11, and there were people were going to help in any way they could. And you see it every time we have a tragedy here. People go in to help.
I mean, New Yorkers are famous for when there's a major disaster, even something like the subway strike. People come together and do things, but one person on the street, forget it.
So New York, both of you are actually saying that in some circumstances, people really get involved and help.
Oh yeah, if it's a general crisis. I mean, I was still in New York when the subway strike happened. Everybody who owned a car went around and were basically a free taxi service to take people wherever they needed to go.
But 9/11 is a much more.
But taking people where they need to go, I'm sorry to interrupt, is not putting your life at danger, right?
No,
So
it isn't, but
I'm
it's certainly a
wondering,
major inconvenience.
right?
And
but
9/11
people-
is a good example of New Yorkers will do anything when it's big enough.
And is the information that people were not going into the Hakerem because it was known to be so polluted? I mean, is that what Is that what the story is? That so many people watched this woman drown because they didn't want to put themselves in danger? Does anybody know?
Maybe that was a factor. Maybe. Maybe. Well, in the Arcon, one person did jump in. And in Australia, one person did jump in. In Australia, there were also lots and lots of bystanders who understandably tried to take cover. And only this guy was brave enough to run out and jump the terrorists.
That guy was not native to Australia, right? And knew what the sound of gunfire sounds like. And many people there thought it was fireworks. They didn't even recognize what it was. My friend and his wife and daughters had just left Tel Aviv, and she said she knew immediately that it was gunfire. So
is that what you heard? The people in Australia thought it was fireworks?
Oh yeah. I heard from people who were there that people thought at first that it was fireworks, and people were at first not so concerned about it.
Wow. Wow. All right. So let's use this as background to try to understand some sources now. Let me share. I need to share the web. Hold on. It's a little bit slow. Okay, now it's here. No, yeah. Just a second. Okay, we have Gordon is coming back in. Let's here's the slideshow. So let's move this if I can. Zoom, it's very difficult to work with Zoom and like the internet at the same time. Yeah, in any case, by the way, Yasmin Feingold, she was a champion rower, and she recently apparently became a math teacher.
Became a what?
A math teacher.
Oh.
All thanks to this guy who saved her life. Okay, let's look at the Rambam and how the Rambam explains the mitzvah that we're dealing with. The text is Mishneh Torah, Book of Damages, right? Damage to life. Laws of a murderer and the preservation of life. I don't know if you remember, but we did this last semester. Okay, last semester we looked at the end of each of the 14 books of Mishneh Torah.
Right.
Rambam finishes Mishneh Torah, finishes the Book of Damages with this. He wants to finish with something positive. So he puts murderer, which is negative, together with its opposite, which is the preservation of life. He puts murderer first, preservation of life last, and that's how he was able to end the Book of Damages, not with damage, but rather with the preservation of life. Okay, we saw that last semester.
Universalist as well, right?
Right. The preservation of life is all life. Exactly. It's universal. And we're going to read the first chapter, which we normally didn't do last semester. Usually the first chapter introduces the mitzvot, and the last chapter ends with something universal. So last semester we did that, the ending in a universal theme. Now we're going to look at the introduction to the mitzvah. So the website, since we're at war with Iran, once again puts up a prayer for soldiers. Maybe this is a good time to devote our learning and to remind us all to pray for the IDF, for civilians in Israel, and especially Pesach. Right? Pesach is our time of freedom. And I think it's worth praying that Pesach becomes the time of freedom for 90 million Iranians. There is a chance. So let's see what the Rambam says. The Rambam here is talking about the prohibition of murder and the obligation to save a life. You can argue also that what we're doing in Iran is to save lots and lots and lots of innocent lives now and in the future. And yes, so let's look at what we're reading here. Whenever a person can save another person's life, but he fails to do so, you could have and you didn't, right? Like Kitty Genovese, all those people. He transgresses a negative commandment, right? In the Torah, we have positive commandments, negative commandments. And there's legal ramifications if you avoid doing a positive commandment, like let's say you don't eat matzah at the Seder, so that is a lesser level of severity than if you actively violate a negative commandment. Why is that important here? Because usually negative commandments require you to do something in order to violate them. For instance, to eat pork, right? You can't violate it unless you do something, unless you eat the pork. Or the prohibition of chametz on Pesach, you can't violate unless you do something, you eat the chametz. Or the prohibition on murder, which is what this chapter is about. You can't violate it unless you do something, unless you actively, raise a gun and shoot somebody. You got to do something in order to accomplish your violation. This mitzvah is strange. This mitzvah, you violate a negative commandment by doing nothing. It may be the only mitzvah in the Torah like that. I can't think of another example. Maybe there is one. You violate a negative commandment without having done a single thing, without having lifted a finger, which is legally unusual. As the Torah says, do not stand idly by while your brother's blood is at stake. The standing idly is the violation of the commandment. And this is something very strange. Okay? This is something extremely strange. Law in modern Western society normally rests upon the idea, in most cases, that your personal life is yours to live as long as you don't violate the rights of anybody else. Okay? It's a law in the Western world is mostly a discussion of rights and much less a discussion of obligations. And what do you have here? You don't have any right not to get involved. It's very, very different. Okay? You have to get involved. You violate the law by not getting involved, even though you haven't violated the rights of anybody else actively. So he gives examples. Similarly, this commandment applies when a person sees a colleague drowning at sea, like Yasmin Feingold, or being attacked by robbers or a wild animal. We should add here a potential murderer, a terrorist, Bandi Beach. Okay, and he can save him himself, or can hire others by payment to save him. Okay, you can either save the person by your own hand, or you can encourage other people to act. Call the police. Call the police doesn't even cost you any money. Similarly, it applies when he hears that Gentiles or Mosrim. Anybody know what Mosrim are? We have a blessing about it in the Amidah, even though it doesn't use that word. Anybody? Okay, I don't know why the color is not working, but
Heretic.
What it means is tattlers, people, Jews who inform on other Jews to the authorities. So either Gentiles or Jews who are working for the Gentiles, conspiring to harm a colleague or planning a snare for him, and he does not inform him and notify him of the danger. Okay, you know that somebody is in danger, you fail to inform the person. That is a case of do not stand idly by while your brother's blood is at stake.
Megillat Esther.
Megillat Esther. How?
Mordechai informed Esther of the fact that Achashverosh was in danger.
Ah, yafeh. Very nice. And it applies when a person knows of a Gentile or a man of force, meaning a brute, who has a complaint against a colleague. And he can appease the aggressor on behalf of the colleague, but he fails to do so. In other words, you have Gentiles who are angry at the Jews going to attack certain Jews, and you could appease that Gentile, right? All of this is being written from a place of exile. Jews are a minority exiled among the nations, and there's always a fear of, what dangers the majority can bring upon you. Now it works. And similarly, in all analogous instances, a person who fails to act transgresses the commandment, do not stand idly by while your brother's blood is at stake. It's not just a matter of intervening, it's also a matter of informing someone of the danger. When a person sees a rodef, a pursuer, pursuing a colleague to kill him, or a woman forbidden as an erva to rape her. Okay, a woman is in danger of rape in a matter that would also be incest. And he has the potential to save the victim and yet fails to do so. He has negated the observance of the positive commandment, you must cut off her hand, and he has transgressed two negative commandments, you may not show pity, do not stand idly by while your brother's blood is at stake. Okay. Even though lashes are not given as punishment for the transgression of these prohibitions, because they do not involve committing a forbidden deed, meaning when you transgress this, you do nothing. And if you do nothing, you cannot get lashes. You can only be lashed for actually doing something wrong. They are nevertheless very sincere. For whoever causes the loss of what?
Severe, not sincere.
Oh, severe. I'm sorry. Whoever causes the loss of an Israelite life is considered as if he destroyed the entire world. And anyone who saves an Israelite life is considered as if he saved the whole world. I'm actually surprised here that the word Yisrael appears. In other contexts, the Rambam doesn't have it appear.
Not in the original Talmud.
Okay, no, this here is the original. I guess it's the other context where the word Yisrael doesn't appear. The Rambam here limits this to Israelites, which is actually surprising to me, and it's something that I want to investigate. So that is the halacha. The halacha is that you can violate a negative commandment by doing nothing, by standing by. Not only are you obligated to intervene, like to save a drowning woman or to save a woman who's being attacked, not only that, but even if you know that somebody has, an evil scheme against a person, and you can help the person, if the person knows in advance he can protect himself, and you don't inform the person of it, then you're responsible. You can ask yourself whether this even applies to things that are not life and death. For instance, You have an employee in a company. You know that the boss is really mad at this employee. Maybe the employee is going to get fired. You could intervene. You could appease the employer, or you could inform the employee, he's really mad at you. You better shape up, or you better do something in order to keep your job. If you don't do that, it's arguable, right, that you're not saving a life, but maybe there is some obligation to get involved in this. Okay, so that is the Rambam. That is the Rambam. Now, this is not typical of Western law. Western law, once again, is usually that as long as you don't violate the rights of others, you can do whatever you want. And you have your rights, you have much less in terms of obligations. We're going to see now the Western version of this. The Rambam is not the Western version, he's the Eastern version. The Western version of this comes from the New Testament. And we're going to see deep similarities, but we're also going to reveal some deep differences. So here's the text. Okay. Whoops. Zoom is very annoying. Hold on. It's helpful that it exists, but it's hard to do on the screen. Okay. That was Maimonides. Now we're going to look at the Gospel of Luke. Okay. The first.
Can I just ask a question?
Go ahead, please. Yeah.
Is this what British and Turkish law would have been modeled on?
I don't understand the question.
Well, presumably, does the laws that we had in Israel before decided to adopt a Jewish law, did they have something like this in British or Turkish law?
No, there was
Nothing
no
at all.
law. There was no law in Israel about this until 1998, when the law was enacted.
In most Western countries, there's no law against not helping.
In most Western countries, there was no law like this until recent decades.
Okay.
Okay, and not in all countries is there such a law. Now, in Israel, remember, in 1980, it became permissible to enact laws in Israel and to enforce laws in Israel based on the precedent of Mishpat Ivri, of the Jewish tradition. So this law is clearly one of those, right? The law is called Chok Lo Ta'amod Al Dam Re'echa. The law of, and the verse from Leviticus about not standing idly by your brother's blood. In countries nowadays where you have laws like this, they're not called by the Israeli name. They're called Good Samaritan laws. Okay? And we need to know, well, who is the Good Samaritan? Let's take a look. Okay? So the New Testament, the first four books are the Gospels. They are four parallel stories of the ministry, we could say, of Jesus of Nazareth. And Luke, we will open up and we will read the translation that you see here. I'll make it a good deal bigger. Okay, this is the 10th chapter of Luke. And this is, by the way, a website where you can read the Bible in like 15 different translations. The one we're looking at now is a World English Bible. It's a non-copyrighted Bible translation by a ministry couple who I think they worked like in islands off of Australia or something like that. Okay, here is the parallel of the Good Samaritan in the New Testament. It's from verse 25 of chapter 10 of Luke. Behold, a certain lawyer stood up and tested him. Okay. What is lawyer a synonym for? Who are the lawyers? What lawyers are these?
Politician.
Anyone?
Rabbi.
What?
Rabbi.
The Levites.
Levites. Yeah. Well, lawyer is one of the ways that Christians translate the Greek word that speaks of the Pharisees.
Pharisees.
You know, all the awful things that we think about lawyers, that they're so pedantic and they're only interested in the word, you know, in the letter of the law, less the spirit of the law, and lawyers know how to manipulate the law and all of that kind of thing. So that's what comes in when Jesus criticizes the Pharisees. And you have lots of stories in the New Testament like this one, where the Pharisees, here a lawyer, a Pharisee, comes to test Jesus. Okay, in other words, to try to, in Yiddish we'd say, to slug him up. All right, to mess him up, to ask him a question he cannot answer, or to ask him a question that'll get him in trouble by answering. So a Pharisee stood up and tested Jesus, saying, "Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?" Well, that's something that everybody wants to know. He, Jesus, said to him, "What is written in the law, in the Torah? How do you read it?" In other words, why are you asking me? You're a Pharisee. You know the Torah. The Torah supposedly tells you how to inherit eternal life. So what did you find in the Torah when you read it? He, the Pharisee, answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." That's what the Torah says. So apparently that's the way to achieve eternal life. He, Jesus, said back to the Pharisee, "You have answered correctly." This is more peaceful than many of his interactions with other Pharisees. "You have answered correctly," he tells the Pharisee. "Do this, love God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Do this, and you will live." But he, the Pharisee, desiring to justify himself, he wants to show him that, you know, he's a real lawyer. He asked Jesus, "Okay, define this. The Torah tells me to love my neighbor as myself, but who exactly is considered my neighbor?" Remember that when we read the Rambam, we saw that the obligation to save life is for all human beings. And yet, at the end, saving a whole world, that was for Israel. So who is my neighbor? He asks Jesus. So what does Jesus have to answer now? He has to answer the Pharisee and explain to him, who is the neighbor that one should love like his own self, the other person, the fellow man? So Jesus answered with a parable. A certain man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. Okay, that's a long trip. It was either by foot or with a donkey or something. And it's in the desert. And this person, it's in the wilderness, there's no law. This person traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho fell among robbers, armed robbers, who both stripped him and beat him and departed, leaving him half dead. So the robbers attack this traveler, take his possessions, beat him, and leave him to die in the wilderness. By chance, a certain priest was going down that way. What is a priest? A Kohen. A Kohen was going down that same way to Jericho, or maybe coming from Jericho. A Kohen. When he, the Kohen, saw him, the man who had been beaten and left to die, he passed on the other side. In other words, he didn't want to get too close to this man who was maybe bleeding to death. In the same way, a Levite also. Who are the Levites?
These sons of descendants of Levi.
Yeah, but what was their status?
They take care of the sacrifices at the temple.
Yeah.
Okay. They're second in command. During the Second Temple period, the most honored person was the priest, who was in charge of the temple, the priests, the Kohanim. Second in command to work for the priests were the Levites. Right? They were also high status. The same way a Levite also, when he came to the place and saw him, this poor man, he passed on the other side to keep as far away as he can. But a certain Samaritan, as he traveled, came where he was. Now a Samaritan comes down the road, sees this man who is bleeding, been left to die. And who is the Samaritan? Who and what is a Samaritan?
The Shomronim, it was a kind of a smaller sect that wasn't well accepted by the rest of society.
All right, a smaller
Was
sect.
anybody who came from Samaria?
Yeah, but from religiously, they were also separate, and they were not very well regarded.
All
They
right.
didn't believe in the Talmud.
Uh-huh. You're all saying pieces of it. It's a little more than that, and we need to understand what it is in order to finish the story. The story of the Samaritans it's in the Book of Kings towards the end, where the Babylonians destroy Jerusalem. They not only bring much or most of the people into exile, they also had a policy where they took other conquered peoples and settled them in lands that were not theirs. In other words, if you conquer 5 countries, you take the people from each country and move them somewhere else. Okay, what's the purpose of that?
To disempower people.
Yeah, and
to disempower people. If you leave a minority in their own land, that's their land. And they will have the potential to rebel against you and make trouble for you. But if you deport the entire population to a place that they do not know, then you are very likely not to have any rebellions. Okay? To a degree, you can think of this, the morality may be different, but you can think of this strategically, even what's going on right this second in Lebanon, right? 500,000 people in Lebanon who live south of the Litani. Most of them are Shiites and many of them are supporters of Hezbollah. Israel told them to all to leave. Otherwise, you're going to be in the middle of a firefight. So 500,000 people are refugees. You have a total in Lebanon right now of nearly 1 million Shiites who are refugees who are not living in their homes. Why? Because the south of the Litani, the IDF evacuated, plus all the Shiites who live in Beirut and the Shiites who live in the Bekaa Valley, right? All of these places are being attacked. And so all of these people have to leave their homes, right? And whether it works or not, I don't know. But what the state of Israel has declared is that these 500,000 people will not be able to return to their homes south of the Litani until Hezbollah is disarmed. You all read this in the papers. Now, what's the logic behind it? If the Shiite villages in South Lebanon are populated,
they
will always pose a danger. That's the logic.
Yeah.
If they have to leave their homes, they won't be able to pose a danger. It's not the same thing, but there are some similarities. The Babylonians are taking people, moving them to another place. In another place, they will not pose that kind of danger, not the same danger as if they're living in their own villages. Now, that's the Samaritans. The Samaritans were moved by the Babylonians into the area of Samaria. Elisheva said earlier the Samaritans must be people from Samaria. It's actually the opposite. It's people who are not from Samaria, but they became called Samaritans because the Babylonians moved them there. At least that's how it's described in the book of Kings, in Sefer Melachim. Right? Historians have other theories, but for our purposes, the biblical story is enough. So these
Where
are
were they
people
from
who are,
originally? Do we know?
I don't know if we know. It might be one of the verses. I don't remember.
Okay.
In any case, you now have people who have been transplanted into Samaria. And according to the story in the book of Kings, they're attacked by lions. And they think it's because they're worshiping their gods, but they're not paying enough homage to the God of the land. So they ask around and they say, how do we worship the God of this land so that the lions will stop attacking us? And eventually they become observers of the Torah. This is much later, but they do become observers of the Torah. Then what happens? The exiles to Babylon return. Shivat Zion, the return to Zion. And they find the Samaritans. And there becomes a big rivalry between the returning Jews and the Samaritans who have been living there for decades, maybe up to 70 years, about who will rebuild Jerusalem and who will rebuild the temple. And the book of Ezra is all about this, about the way the Jews rejected Samaritan participation in this. And it has a lot to do with pedigree. The Jews who returned, the pedigree is recorded. They're natives of Judah, whereas the Samaritans are people who don't have any pedigree. Yet at the same time, the Samaritans see themselves already as observers of the Torah, as worshipers of the God of Israel. And this continues, ladies and gentlemen, thousands of years, right to this very day. There are still Samaritans today. Today they are a tiny, tiny minority. They live in two different places. They have a temple in Har Grizim. There's a settlement called Har Bracha. Rabbi Eliezer Melamed, the author of Pinei Halacha, has a yeshiva there. It's a very unique yeshiva. And at the bottom of the mountain, you have the Samaritans. They're neighbors. And but it's a very small minority. In fact, demographically, they're dying out. And because they're dying out, they're importing wives, apparently mostly from Ukraine. They import wives so that their genealogy won't die out. That's how small it is today. But even though someone said that it was a minority, once it wasn't such a small minority. The Samaritans were a huge, powerful group in the land of Israel. And to the extent that Jews and Samaritans bonded together as allies to revolt against the Byzantines. This is after the destruction of Jerusalem. The Samaritans were once quite numerous and quite powerful, and it's only in more recent centuries that they've dwindled down to virtually nothing. Bottom line is that in Second Temple society, the top of the totem pole was the Kohanim. They controlled the temple, and the temple was the center of everything. Then you had the Levites. The Levites were like the bureaucracy of the temple, the people with the best jobs. You work in the temple. They were rung too. And who was at the bottom of the totem pole? Samaritans. Samaritans were the least regarded members of society. Now let's look again at our story. A certain Samaritan, as he traveled, came where he, the wounded man, was. When he saw him, he was moved with compassion. Look at that. He was moved with compassion. What did the Kohen do?
Walk by.
Worse than just walking by.
Cross the street and walk
Cross
by.
to the other side of the street, not to be anywhere near him. And the same thing with the Levite. But the Samaritan was filled with compassion, came to him, bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. In other words, he's putting on salves to try to help heal the wounds. He set him on his own animal. He might have had, say, a donkey. So he picks this wounded man up, sets him on the animal, brought him to an inn. It appears from this verse that he put the man on the animal and he led the animal on foot. And he took care of him in the inn. On the next day, when he departed, the Samaritan had to leave. He took out 2 denarii, 2 Roman coins, gave them to the host of the inn, right, the manager, and said to him, take care of him. Whatever you spend beyond that, beyond the 2 denarii, I will repay you when I return. In other words, he pays for the recuperation, for the hospital bill, if you will. And he pays the owner of the lodge to take care of this man until he gets better. That's the parable that Jesus tells the Pharisee. Now he asks the Pharisee, which of these 3 do you think seemed to be a neighbor to him who fell among the robbers? Was the Kohen a neighbor?
No.
Was the Levite a neighbor?
No.
Was the Samaritan a neighbor?
Yes.
Even though the Samaritan was not Jewish. Okay? By the way, in the Talmud, Samaritans are called kutim. It appears a lot in the Talmud. You know, you have different classes of people regarding mitzvot, and there are certain rules about how a kuti does or does not take part in the world of mitzvot. So it turns out that the priest and the Levite are not neighbors, even they're the most respected of your own people. And the Samaritan, who is not a member of your people, he is the most respected. So he, the Pharisee, said, the most neighborly one is he who showed mercy on him. That's the neighbor. It may not be a neighbor by blood, but he's a neighbor in his heart. Then Jesus said to this Pharisee, go and do likewise. You be like this Samaritan. You love your neighbor as yourself, like this Samaritan did, where the neighbor may not be of your own people. And then you will inherit eternal life. And thus the question is answered. Okay. Tell me, what is the, how should I put it? What is the ideological point of this story? What's the message?
That just because you have standing and reputation doesn't really mean you're a good person.
That's
you have
definitely,
to act on it.
That's definitely a moral message of this parable. But let's get a little, what's the political message of this parable?
That one doesn't have to be your own race, religion, whatever, to be a neighbor.
Okay. And what does that mean for Jesus? Okay. There's something going on here besides the need to have compassion. There are lots and lots of texts in the New Testament, some of them dealing with Jesus himself, some of them dealing with the apostles, and the most extreme ones being in the epistles of Paul.
Is he pointing to the corruption of the Kohanim and the Leviim?
He's certainly pointing to that, but that's not the political message. That's a moral message.
That you don't.
That official people can be corrupt and poor people can be upstanding. That's a moral message. But beyond that, there's a political message.
You don't have to observe all the halachot to be a good person.
Aha. The Samaritan is not a Pharisee.
Yeah.
He doesn't keep the laws like the Pharisees think. And you have this in a lot of places in the New Testament. The central question here is this. Jesus says in many places in the New Testament that if you accept me and you accept my message, you will have a place in the world to come. In other words, having a place in the world to come depends not on your DNA, not on your family, but rather on accepting the message of Jesus. Any human being can accept the message of Jesus, right? Anybody can do it. And so that bears the question, what happens to the covenant which was specifically with Israel? Okay, this is a central tension in the New Testament. On the one hand, Jesus is a Jew. And on that same hand, the covenant with Israel, he says, is still in force. But on the other hand, there's a message here that belief is enough, even if you are not a member of the people of Israel. Okay, this is fascinating stuff. There's a metaphor of Paul, where Paul talks about a tree. Okay, the tree is Israel. All right, or at least a branch of the tree is Israel. Okay, if you have a pruner who comes to this tree, there's going to be some branches that are not so good, and he's going to cut them off. And then what the pruner can, not a pruner, more than a pruner, but what you can do is, if you have a healthy branch from another tree, you can graft it onto this original tree. And this metaphor of Paul, you can read it in different ways, and it's not completely clear, but it's saying one of two things. Either it's saying the Gentiles can be grafted onto the tree of Israel, and to do so, they don't have to convert, they don't have to do circumcision. It's their belief in Jesus which allows them to be grafted onto the tree of Israel. That's one way to read it. Another way to read it is that the branch of Israel is completely replaced by the new branches which can get grafted onto the tree, the healthy branches which are grafted by virtue of their belief. Okay, yeah, Elisheva.
It's always stated believing Jesus, but it seems that it's not just, yeah, you're the Son of God, whatever you say you are. It's not that belief. It's the belief in the principles and following them, not just belief.
Okay.
But most of the Christians I've known think it's just belief. I believe in Jesus. Doesn't matter what I do, I'm going to heaven. It's not that. It's believing in the behaviors and doing them.
Let's for the sake of argument, take what you say completely. Even with that, you don't have to get circumcised and eat kosher to get bread grafted onto the tree. That's the point. Okay, so when Jesus is saying you have Kohanim who are morally corrupt, the worst people, and you have a Samaritan who follows in the ways of Jesus, what he's saying is that he's relating to attention. How significant is it to be part of the people of Israel? According to this story, it's not that significant. Okay, and that's the more a political side of the message that we're dealing with here. So that's the basis of the Good Samaritan. And I think we should emphasize two more things, and then we'll finish with it. Thing number one, for the Rambam, it was all about obligation. If you stand idly by and you don't save someone's life, you have violated a negative commandment. You're obligated, even if you don't want to, even if you don't feel compassion. Whereas the center of this story is this phrase. Look, the Samaritan, when he saw the wounded man, was moved with compassion. A true Christian, a true follower of Jesus is filled with compassion. And the motivation for saving the life is the compassion that you feel for the person. What's the motivation for the Rambam?
Your obligation to halakha.
Your obligation to God. Even if you don't feel any compassion, if you go in there to save the person, you've kept the mitzvah. Okay, and this is part of a great divide between classical Judaism and Christianity. Do you have to feel it in your heart? Okay, let's say there's a good deed to save somebody's life or some other good deed, it doesn't matter. And you're obligated to do it. But you don't really want to. You're not moved by compassion. It's not in your heart. Should you do it even though you don't feel it in your heart?
Yes.
Yeah.
You say yes. The other possible answer is obviously
No.
no. Okay. Should you do it or should you not do it? That's a classic difference between the New Testament and the Midrash. In the Midrash, in the Mishnah, for instance, you have mitoch shelo lishma ba lishma. If you do things for the wrong reason, eventually you'll do them for the right reason. But even if you're doing them for the wrong reason, you should still do them.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the New Testament, you have stories where Jesus castigates the Pharisees for doing supposedly holy things, even though in their hearts, they are corrupt. Okay, the message is the opposite. The messages of the Midrash is do it even if you don't feel it. And the message of the New Testament is that if you don't feel it, you're corrupt. And then there's no worth, there's no value in the deed if the heart doesn't accompany it. And that's why smack in the middle of this story of the Good Samaritan, you have the Samaritan being filled with compassion. Whereas for the Rambam, even if there is no compassion, do it.
Well, one of the things that people really haven't figured out is the words that are spoken like this. Think not that I've come to destroy the law and the prophets. I haven't come to destroy the law and the prophets. Not one dot or one dash of anything will change until all things change. Whoever teaches to break the smallest commandment shall be the smallest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever teaches and does all the commandments will be great in the kingdom of heaven. So, how to reconcile that with, the balance of the scriptures, especially with Paul, because there's a discussion and a lot of argument that Paul actually teaches something that Jesus doesn't teach.
Mhm.
So, that's a big issue, especially when, on the other hand, Jesus says, all the law and all the prophets shall continue, and you can't break the smallest commandment. So to understand that is not easy. Now, the other thing is, Jesus also said that, and this is the story about the woman at the well, and she was a Samaritan also. She told that Samaritan woman, salvation is from the Jews. Okay, so salvation doesn't come from anybody. It doesn't come from some new teaching by Paul. It doesn't come from the Christians, quote unquote, the Christians, or anybody else in the world, or the Muslims. He told that Samaritan woman at the well that salvation comes from the Jews, and so those are very interesting things to take into account when discussing these kinds of situations. Also, on a side note, Pharisees and lawyers are mentioned in the same phrases in certain parts of the, let's call it the New Testament, more the Second Testament. So that not necessarily is a lawyer a Pharisee, because they're in even the same sentences or same verses referred to separately. Regarding the Samaritans themselves, if you go to their website, there's 900 of them. There's 450 in Cologne and 450 in the West Bank.
Mm-hmm.
They teach that their heritage comes from the lost 10 tribes of Israel. The 10 tribes that were first, and they teach that not everyone was carried away into captivity. That there were some left, in particular women that were left, and that their line comes from that line. And you're correct. There was a big war. There was 3 wars where the Samaritans fought the Romans, and they had a population of about 1 million Samaritans, man. They got massacred, genocide. They were treated really, really bad. But so just adding that a little bit.
Wow. Thanks for all of the additions. A lot of very, very good points. I'm not saying that Jesus and Paul are the same thing. I agree with you. I'm just saying that the tension that comes out in Paul is already present in the stories about Jesus himself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Jesus is already dealing with, on the one hand, you have Israel, which is still important to him. But on the other hand, you have the hearts. And the heart of Israel may not be as good as the heart of someone who is not of Israel. And that's a kind of tension. You see it in the Good Samaritan story and in many, many other stories. The tension is there. Eventually, Paul brings that tension in a certain direction. But I do think that the tension is already present in the earliest stories of the New Testament.
Well, the one thing that you brought up, the one thing you brought up 2 or 3 lessons ago is that Rambam had a position, an opinion on how everything was going to shake out toward the end. And there was a rabbi, you said, and I forgot his name, that some rabbi said that ultimately, universally, we're all like one family. And he quoted, and you quoted it, the Genesis, where and God created man and woman. And so you referred to that, this is like 3 or 4 lessons ago, that's what that rabbi used to ultimately say that God treats us, Hashem treats us all as his children. And in the end, he's going to take care of everybody. I forgot what rabbi that was that you mentioned. And
wow. I honestly don't remember this. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll search for it, but you did mention it. And so in the end, Hashem takes care of everybody.
Okay. Okay, in the end, God created all of humanity. Okay, so the Good Samaritan, you have compassion at the center. The Rambam, you have obligation at the center. And to some degree, these reflect different emphases between early Jews and early Christians. Let's finally look at the Israeli law to finish our class. What does the law actually say? This is the Israeli law. Once again, in Wikitext, Wikisource, you have free access to the entire corpus of law of the state of Israel. It's a fantastic project. So we'll translate to English. The law of thou shalt not stand for the blood of thy neighbor, which was enacted in 1998, as we said. A person has a duty. Duty is the significant thing here. That's the Rambam side. And you'll notice that there's no compassion anywhere here. It's duties. A person has a duty to provide assistance to a person who is in serious and immediate danger to his life, physical integrity, or health due to a sudden event, when it is within the person's power to provide assistance without putting himself or others at risk. If you put yourself at risk or other people could be hurt, then this duty does not apply. Notice that with Ahmed al-Ahmad in Bandi Beach, he put himself in danger. You can do that, and it's an enormous act. But the law does not, in Israel, does not obligate you to put yourself in anger like he did. The person who notifies the authorities or calls another person who can provide the necessary assistance, like you call the police, like people said after Kitty Genovese, should have called the police. So if you call the police, someone who calls the police will be deemed to have provided assistance for the purposes of this law. In this section, the authorities are the Israel police, or Magen David Adom, or the fire service. Okay. And now the business of paying back. What happens if the person who assists to save life gets injured, like in Bandi Beach, or has to pay for resources? The court may oblige the person who caused the danger that the survivor was placed in, including the survivor himself if he caused the danger. If a person puts himself in danger and then gets saved, to compensate the person who provided assistance for the reasonable expenses, okay, under his duty and provisions for the payments he incurred. In other words, if I am injured and there's hospital bills, or there's, you lose income or whatever it is because I saved somebody, then the person who was threatening life is liable to pay me. And if the person was just, irresponsible and put himself in danger, and I save him and I get injured, then the person I saved is obligated to pay me for the damages incurred or for the resources that were expended. That's the Israeli law by virtue of the Mishpat Ivri, by virtue of the Rambam. It basically parallels the Rambam. And this is one of the primary examples of a law in the state of Israel, which is based on ancient halakha. Questions or discussion? Comments?
So if you stop to help somebody who had a car accident because they were drunk, they were driving drunk, and you get injured, they're responsible for your injuries to compensate you for your injuries because they put themselves in danger by driving drunk. Correct?
Apparently, yes.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a good law.
Or same
Good
kind
law.
of thing. Yeah, if someone starts a bonfire or something in a place where he shouldn't do it and he gets hurt, that's the same thing.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, he's in danger. So the author of the article that we read in the beginning thinks, yeah, it's a good law, he says, but it's not going to actually make anybody save anybody. Maybe, but it's good to have a law in the books that says that there is such a duty, that, that life is not just rights, it's also obligations, that you have obligations for others beyond the obligation not to violate their rights.
How many everyday people are aware of that law and
I
what
have
it
no idea.
implies?
Probably not too many.
Which
some.
makes it ineffective if you don't know it's there.
Right. You can say that about lots of laws.
Well, some are kind of self-evident. You
Ignorance
know
of
that
the
there's
law
a
is-
law against murdering and stealing, but this is a little more subtle.
How
Ignorance
many
of the law is no
how many
excuse.
people get in trouble with income tax law, even though they don't even realize they've done anything wrong?
This is true.
Uh-huh.
Who was it
Nope.
who just said ignorance of the law is no excuse, which is also true?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So we have so far two laws. The first law was last week. What was it? It was I'm forgetting already.
Remember.
Oy, what's happening to me? The first law was
Takanat HaShavim.
Shavim, Ken.
to help people return to the straight and narrow. And then this week we have the obligation not to stand over the blood of your fellow man. And we're going to be continuing week by week with halachot that become some version of Israeli law. We're actually quite deep into the semester. When we get towards the end of the semester, the big one, we're going to spend several classes on this. It's endless, is copyright law.
Interesting.
And it's going to be bigger and better and more fun than you can currently imagine. So we'll do a few more laws, then we'll get to copyright law, and that'll bring us towards the end of the semester. I think we have 6 classes or something after Pesach.
This is class 7, and we have a total of 12, so 5 more.
Okay. So if this is 7, then we'll do 8 before Pesach next week. And then hopefully...
Yeah, 8
God
is next
willing,
week, and then the Pesach break.
Yeah. So God willing, I will not be here for Pesach. And the week after next week, I'll be visiting my parents if there are flights.
Yeah.
No chance. No chance. Sorry to say. No chance. Sorry to say.
No chance, you say? Not talking about next week. I'm talking about the week after.
No chance.
That's what you think, huh? And then after Pesach, we'll have 4 more, much of which will be copyright law. Mom and Dad, I hope we'll be there. If we're not there because there's no flights, I'm coming in the summer, Mom and Dad.
It sounds good.
This has after Pesach, hunting wild animals, delayed wages, and the last 2 on copyright.
The last 2 on copyright. Okay.
You're right.
Okay.
Okay,
So
everyone be well, be safe.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm gonna chime in. I'm sitting on the beach in Eilat, camping out, and from where I'm at right now, I can see Egypt, I can see Saudi Arabia, and I can see Jordan. And wow, I never knew you could do that from the beach on Eilat. So.
Wow.
Yeah, I used to do that when I worked there.
Yeah, we do that.
Okay.
Thanks for
All right,
joining in from the beach on Eilat and able to bring all those sources while you're sitting on the beach.
Oh, kadosh, kadosh, kadosh.
But
all right, thanks, y'all.
Okay,
לילה
bye-bye,
טוב
everybody.
לכולם.
תודה
Bye.
רבה.
Thank you very much.
Avi.
Bye-bye.
Did he take a break?